Hello everyone, welcome to the Hand Spinner Review Spot YouTube channel. You can click on the link in the description below to go to our Facebook page for all manner of reviews and features and all that kind of good stuff on hand spinners. Today we're going to look at a rarefied, legendary, top of the line, much hyped hand spinner, and one that was reviewed on the page, like I say, the link's in the description, some time ago. So if you'd like to read a written review and see some still images of this specific one, please go over there and have a look and give us a like and all that kind of thing. So, this is the ZeroFeud Tri-Compass, a name to conjure with in the hand spinner world, and in my view, as will become clear, with good reason. So, let's give it a quick look with a few size comparisons. So, there's the Axis Micro. Let's stick a Turnian in there, and a Tri-Stubby, and a torque bar. What do you think? Is that enough? Oh, I don't know. Let's stick a Trillium in there as well, because it will get compared to the Trillium quite a bit by a lot of different people and also by myself later on. So let's move these to one side and have a closer look at the spinner in question. So, firstly, some housekeeping. This piece, I bought this very, very early on in the production of these, and Rick at ZeroFeud wasn't quite as busy at that point, and he kindly agreed to flame anodize this one for me. Now, please don't hassle Rick for flame anodization. He's incredibly busy, and you simply don't get custom pieces like this out of him very often. I can completely understand that because he is in ludicrously huge demand. So, let's have an overall look at it. It's a beautiful design. I was never 100% sold on the basic compass design. I've since come around to it, and you know, your eye develops as you look at things, and sometimes things take longer to grow on you than others. But the moment that Rick showed the CAD drawings for the Tri version, I was totally sold, and I was hassling him. I felt less guilty about it than I would do now, but yeah, I was hassling him. And we managed to get one of these in my hands, and the instant I took this out of the packaging, I was amazingly impressed. It's more than anything else, what's beautiful about ZeroFeud's work is the smoothness. The balance is just perfection. There's nothing else in my collection and nothing else that I've handled which is any more stable than a ZeroFeud. I've handled a couple things which are just about as stable, and the Trillium we'll come back to in a second, but to be honest, almost nothing else feels as good as these do when it comes to that. It's also in the titanium version. Now, I've only handled the aluminium version of the titanium, so I can't speak to what the heavier ones are like, but in the titanium version, it's very easy to fidget with. The fact that you have quite a lot of negative space between the lobes works very well, but equally, because you've got these raised weights, which are kind of reminiscent of something that you'd see on something like a torque bar, you get still a decent amount of outer mass, which gives you a fair spin time. These are not intended to be a long spinning tri-spinner at all, but they still do reasonably well. I mean, I've had 4 minutes and plus out of this without too much of a problem now the bearing's broken in. And more than anything else, though, is just how it looks while it's doing it. As I hope you'll be able to see, there are these radial cutouts around the button, which obviously are around the bearing underneath. And because Rick managed to make these connection portions so small, when you actually spin it, they effectively disappear. They're pretty much not there. I mean, it's a lovely effect. It just makes the piece look like it's spinning and floating around the button. And with this one's flame anodization, which obviously is something fairly unique now, you get this fantastic kind of flaming orb effect, which I feel very lucky to have in my collection, to be honest. To be honest, I think anyone with one of these is quite lucky to have one in their collection. So yes, let's have a quick look at the bearing, which is contributing to the sheer smoothness that you get from any of ZeroFeud spinners, but particularly the Tri-Compass. So that is a 10-ball hybrid ceramic R188. Now the 10 ball just spreads the load out a bit more than you would get on the 8 ball that you get in things like the Stubby and the torque bar, and I think it contributes at least a little to the overall smoothness of these pieces. As you can see, it's glue fit inside there, it's incredibly free spinning, it's just really, really nicely done. It's very clean, all the machining works beautiful. These are then generally speaking, his pieces are tumbled and stonewashed, and that just gives this really beautiful satiny smooth finish. You have really nice chamfering to everywhere. It's a very straight chamfer, but it really works. It just softens the edges, creates two less acute angles, which is really nice. So I'll pop the buttons back on again. The buttons on this are also flame anodized, and something else worth mentioning is how really nicely machined the ZeroFeud buttons are, and the design is lovely. It's got these sort of steps which take you down into a concave portion, but as I say, in a stepped form rather than anything particularly aggressive. It's really nice. They're very comfortable. You can locate your finger on them very easily, and when you're using these, they're just a real pleasure, to be honest. Now, any downsides? Yeah, there are a couple. One is the fact that these are incredibly hard to get hold of. Rick has another full-time job, and ZeroFeud is a side piece for him, and he works incredibly hard on it, and I have no criticisms of him at all, to be absolutely honest. But because of that, the drops come relatively irregularly, and things sell out very fast. And there haven't been any tri-compasses on there, particularly titanium tri-compasses like this one, for some time now. So they're not easy to get hold of, and as a result, secondary market prices, they're not as bad as they were, particularly for the mini compass and the full compass, which are his bipole versions. They're not as bad as they were, but they are still high. And tri-compasses are still really sought after, particularly if you have one that's a bit unique like this one, or Rick has done some with engraving here and there. Yeah, those are getting up there into really quite high levels for the hand spinner market. The other thing that I would mention is, while it's very ergonomic in these light materials, and it still was very much in the aluminium one that I also had, I can imagine in heavy materials, the fact that it's so slim where your finger connects, that I can imagine that certain techniques might be slightly uncomfortable and might give you slight hot spots, but that is hypothetical, because on a piece like this, which is quite light, and certainly on the aluminium one I also used, that's not the case. The other thing that I'd mention is that these can be quite noisy. Now, when I first got this, particularly the aluminium one, but this one as well, that it was really quite noticeably loud. It wasn't terrible by any means. It certainly wasn't like the Vorso flat top or anything like that. It was bearable, but it wasn't as quiet as a Stubby. It wasn't as quiet as a Torque Bar. It wasn't as quiet as an Axis Micro. And then since those days, we've also had things like the Trillium and the NTO Turnian. Those are much quieter spinners than this. Having said that, the longer I've used this spinner and the more that the bearing has broken in, the quieter it's become. And now I'm at a point with it where it's really quite unintrusive. It doesn't cause much of a problem anymore. So I would say that, bearing that in mind, the fact that it appears from my limited experience with this unit to dissipate over time as the bearing breaks in, it's a pretty minor nitpick, to put it mildly. Aside from those things, it's every bit as good as the hype says. It's an exceptional hand spinner. It's a simple but beautiful design. It's very classic. It's perfectly machined. The bearing is exceptional. It feels great to use. And more than anything else for me, it is dead smooth. Dead smooth. So if you can get one, particularly if you can score one in a drop or via some very nice altruistic person that isn't trying to make a huge amount of money on the secondary market, get one. They're just exceptional. Thank you very much, guys. Catch you at the next video. Bye-bye.